Welcome back. I've got Jon Ostenson on the line. John, how are you?
Hey, Michael, doing great. Yourself?
I'm doing really, really well. Really been looking forward to this conversation for a bit, and because the work you do is pretty intriguing. I think the pretty much all the listeners, but those that have that entrepreneurial itch are really going to find some value out of this. So, why don't you share a little bit about you and the work you do, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Yeah, well, to kick it back, like so many of your listeners, spent many years in the corporate world and had a good run, but wanted to do something a little more entrepreneurial. I had that desire to step out and build my own empire instead of just someone else's. And so about 8 years ago, I had the opportunity and really stumbled into franchising. Stepped in as president of ShelfGenie, which is a large franchise system all across North America, and ran the day-to-day operations, supporting all of our owners across North America. And for me, that was the light bulb moment to this model of franchising where so many people with different backgrounds could step into a new industry for them, take some transferable skill sets with them, and be successful in building their own business. So really fell in love with it. Ended up partnering with the founder. We spun off. We've been invested in franchises ourselves on the franchisee side. So I've been and am currently on both sides of the table, but I've got good people running those businesses, and allows me now to spend probably 95% of my time helping other entrepreneurs and investors or wannabe-preneurs, right, get involved in business ownership through franchising. So love getting out there, educating. It's entirely free to work with us. We work with over 600 franchise brands and really helping individuals figure out what are those top opportunities that are available in their market that could be the right fit.
I love the work because so many people that want to be entrepreneurs are, trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? What do I launch? But if there's existing businesses that already exist, so pretty much the framework, here's the business. I don't want to call it business in a box. That demeans a lot of work that goes into it, but something like here's something, it's a template that's easy to go, and there's so many different businesses that are in the franchise world that you can be a franchisee for. You just pick the ones that aren't heavily saturated in your area, and you jump into it, launch it if you've got business sense. And most people that want to do this have at least some initial sense. And I think that's when, working with your team and all that, just kind of, roundabout way, vet them and go, okay, is this right for you? Because it's not right for everybody. But as we talked in the pre-show a little bit, it you don't have to be as heavily involved as you would think, because there's a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to be spending 800 hours a day at the place and all of that. And maybe in the beginning you might, but it depends on what you're launching. But just thinking about the different organizations that are franchises, I can walk out my door and probably come across 300 of them in a 10-minute walk. It just they're everywhere.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on a couple of great points there. Franchising is not right for everyone. Some people are too entrepreneurial and want to put their thumbprints all over the business, but others say, "Hey, I love that," and I would humbly say I believe it is the better path for most people into business ownership. At least that first go round, because you've got a franchisor on the sidelines that's coaching you. You've got other franchisees across the nation that are living the same thing day in, day out. So you're exchanging best practices, learning from each other. You've got a playbook. You know that the product market fit is there because it's been successful in other markets. So it's all about going out and executing against that. Maybe you're getting supply chain benefits on the services side or the product side, buying in bulk. You get your marketing somewhat optimized early on because, again, they've launched the same business in other markets. So when they're running the marketing for you, there's just a lot of benefits. Even when you go to exit, oftentimes you get a higher multiple on that sale than you would otherwise. So, I call it a trifecta, a business ownership, but you're building a business that, is going to have cash flow. If you run it halfway decent, it's going to provide an exit value down the road. So you're building an asset. And then third, you get tax benefits that oftentimes people forget about. They compare their W-2 salary with business ownership. And, it takes work in the early days. You may not be making a ton of money, but you're also able to write off a ton of expenses. So from a net standpoint, there's some benefits there, and I've got all sorts of creative tax strategies around that. But you also hit on the industry side. I wrote a book called Non-Food Franchising, which I'm happy to share with all of your listeners. We'll pass out a free copy. We'll talk more about it later. But I've got nothing against the food guys. We need them. We support them. But my humble belief is there are easier ways to make money in business ownership and through franchising in all these other industries that oftentimes people don't think about.
Yeah, it's critical. There's, everybody kind of thinks franchise. I think they just naturally gravitate to, fast food restaurants and restaurant chains and all of that. And it's like, yeah, they're there. A good buddy of mine, his parents ran a construction company. They might still do. I think they're retired now, but I don't. They may still own the business. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to them about it lately. But they basically were contracted with one of the major fast food restaurants. I won't mention a name because they don't sponsor my show, but I'll give you a hint. Their logo is gold and it looks like an M. So I'll let you do deductive reasoning on that. But they were contracted to build locations in the Chicagoland area. So they had the system down. They had the template from McDonald's, on how to build them. And they would literally have a plot of land, and next thing you know, boom, here's a McDonald's. As I just spoiled the name, here's the McDonald's. Right, within weeks. Which is great for a franchisee to be able to have something launched so quickly. Because as a business owner, when you launch a business, it takes time. It's not for majority of people, it's not an overnight thing. But here's something where it's something that's well established. And I think one of the big things too is name recognition. Okay, my organization, I launched it back in 2016. It took time to grab some attention and all of that, and now it's doing good. But if you're a franchisee and you open up a well-known name brand, people already know somewhat what you're about before you even open the doors. And that is a huge, huge advantage for people that are just starting a business.
Yeah, and I would say oftentimes people think the brand is a big benefit, like you're saying. I would say if you're in food, if you're in hotels, two areas that we don't focus as much energy on, then brand is extremely important. What's interesting is some of the categories our clients are getting involved in, things like home and property services. Think about insulation. Insulation is a $52 billion a year business in the US. Most people I talk to can't name a company within the insulation space. So I'd say brand in that case is probably less important. And some of these other attributes, what kind of support system are you getting? What's the technology stack? How do you differentiate in your lead generation from other clients? But I'll just kind of piggyback on that thought. Some of the things that people are getting into, and we're seeing more interest than we've ever seen before, it's categories like home and property services, non-sexy, cash flowing, understandable businesses that aren't trendy. They're not going out of style anytime. So it's things like insulation, gutters, flooring, dumpsters. But then people also have an interest in health and wellness. Everything from mental health to men's health to maybe a little bit of fitness. It's categories that people will always spend on regardless of the economy, somewhat recession resilient. So think about kids, pets, seniors. You're always going to spend on those categories, right? The things you care about. So I'd say that's the general theme that we're seeing out there right now. But with record levels of cash on the sideline, a lot of real estate investors are also coming our direction because they're saying, hey, there aren't that many good real estate deals to be had, scarcity of inventory and such. And so they're jumping into franchising because it's another, tax advantaged alternative investment within their portfolio is how they see it.
And that's a good thing to do is diversify. And we don't give investment advice on this show, but diversification, I will give you that. That goes a long way. And you had mentioned pets, and a conversation I had last year with an organization that was starting up, and they were starting to branch out a little bit and probably will be looking at some type of a franchisee type of model, I would guess, down the road. But, they were, home-based pet care services. So literally they come up in a Sprinter van and they can, help take care of your dog or cat or other pet, right there outside your home. So you don't have to book an appointment to go get your dog nails cut or a groomer or things like that. They're at your front door. So if your dog doesn't like that type of service, you basically trick them, and they're like, "Where are we going? We're going for a walk." And all of a sudden, there's the van, and all of a sudden, the dog, puts on the parking brake, and you're trying to drag this boulder, and it doesn't want to move. Not that I would know anything about that, as my dog's in the other room. It's like when 20 pounds becomes 200 pounds is if I'm taking him to the groomer. He puts that parking brake on hard. But thankfully, I just pick him up and like, all right, well, we'll go this way then. Your appointment's
Good.
on the 27th, Henry. You don't you enjoy. Yeah, good thing he can't. Good thing he doesn't know calendars. But again, it's that's just one service out of countless different things. And I love how you mentioned, a lot of the services are recession proof. It doesn't matter what's going on in the economy, people still need to have certain things done, whether it's insulation or, they need to have their flooring repaired or plumbing or legal or you name it, that all the apps that are out there now, it's like, well, that could be a franchise model as far as
Yeah.
coaching or, even, professional development coaching can be a franchise. We see it, there's all kinds of different
Yeah.
coaches out there that have basically a franchise system where you get access to all of their resources that they've created over the years, and you can, coach on those things. And it again, it shortens the time, from my perspective, of building something out because you've got a reservoir of stuff that has been tested and proved, and like you mentioned before too, which is I think really important for a lot of entrepreneurs. The phrase solo entrepreneur comes in, and it has a couple meanings. One, it's you yourself doing it, but sometimes you feel like you're on an island and you don't have any peers that are also launching a business, which you do, but you don't really
Yeah.
have that network. But in a franchisee type of situation, there's a network of people that did the same thing or doing the same thing as you. And to have those mentors available is huge.
Yeah, no, definitely. It allows you, just to be cliche here, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And you really are starting on third base because you're not having to reinvent the wheel. And so, that gives a lot of people comfort. And I have a lot of clients that will do what I call franchise stacking. That may be where they come back 6 to 12 months after launching their first one and buying another one. Oftentimes they'll buy multiples within that same brand, but oftentimes they're also buying additional brands that may either complement or diversify from that core business. So there's a lot of strategy that can go around this. We touched on this just slightly earlier, but I'd say about half of our clients are owner operators. They're looking to make the jump and run the business themselves, oftentimes with the eye on eventually replacing themselves and putting a manager in place and moving on to the next thing. Then about half of our clients are looking to come in as what we call semi-passive or investor model, where they would, manage the manager, but put a manager in place day one. And, again, I don't want to sugarcoat it. There's still work that goes involved. It's not easy to stand up a business. But when you've got that support structure on the sidelines and you've got a franchisor that can carry a lot of that support water day in, day out, and supporting your manager, it takes a lot of the burden off of you as the owner and it makes it doable.
From the revenue standpoint, you're reinvested in the business to grow and eventually get the ROI on it where you can look and go, well, I did this before, let's do it again. And then all of a sudden you have somebody that owns a bunch of locations, or as you said, diversify. Maybe they're in the home improvement space, but they've got the plumbing and heating, and they also have the infrastructure or maybe even a construction build or whatever. They may have, a handful of different businesses that they're owners in, or maybe even co-owners. You can partner up with people too on this. And
Yeah.
and what that does is it just gives you a diversification, and as different tides of things happens, because sometimes the home renovation, although it really hasn't had much of a drop off in recent years, it just seems like, okay, the homes are selling like crazy, okay, the market's doing great, okay, there's a lot of home renovations going on, oh, the market's going down on the sales. Well, people are renovating because they're not going to move, but they want to improve where they're living. So it's I'm not trying to say that that's one industry that continues to do well, but it continues to do well. And there's people, there's side businesses from that benefit from that. If you're not one that's crafty and want to, put in your own flooring yourself, there's ways to, look at organizations that are out there. And again, you look at areas that are booming and growing and, all of that. If you're looking for opportunities to launch a business that would benefit from that area, that's a great way to go about it too.
Yeah. And our biggest challenge right now is that good opportunities move incredibly fast in good markets. And so we're constantly working relationships with the franchisors. I mean, I personally do more placements than anybody else in the country. And so it allows me firsthand visibility into not only what's resonating, but also in working my relationships with the franchisors to try to get my candidates bumped up in the pipeline to get first dibs on that territory. So that's kind of the dynamic that we're seeing at play right now.
Oh yeah, definitely. In South and the Southwest has been booming. I know Atlanta's been
Yeah.
crazy. Even where they built the new ballpark for the Braves, and it was like, wait a minute, Turner Field's not that old. Why are they doing that? It was because I think it was Georgia Tech that wanted the stadium, so they're like, all right, we'll give us enough money, we'll go build a new one. And yeah, I was at that park, Trist, a couple of years ago, and it just the build around that area because I used to have an aunt and uncle that lived in Georgia, so I was kind of familiar with that
Yeah.
area and went into it, and I'm like, I don't recognize any of this. This is all brand new. And that's opportunity. So if you see an area that is growing or is having a revitalization, like downtown Detroit, for example, I'm originally from Michigan, the revitalization of downtown Detroit area is astonishing. I just never thought I would see it in my life, and I'm thrilled that it's happening. Again, opportunities there, and people are moving back downtown. That means they're going to need food, and they're going to need clothing stores. They're going to need things repaired. So just pay attention. I think that's the ultimate goal. And I want to talk about the book in a moment, but pay attention where things are going. And there's many ways to do that. But if you see something in your area, it's like, oh, wow, there seems to be a resurgence there. Okay, what services do you think they'll need that aren't there now? There's
Yeah.
an opportunity.
We got the aging population. They call it the silver tsunami. We've been talking about 10,000 people turning 65 every day for, I don't know, probably the past decade. And so now they're in their mid 70s, right? And, that in-home healthcare, I mean, we had 13 clients buy into that last year, into that space. But then we have people keep having babies. And so youth soccer has been one that a lot of our clients have done very well with. And so, yeah, it's all these niches, again, that are not top of mind until you see the opportunities in front of you. And then you say, wait a minute, I never thought about this. And we get that feedback from our clients all the time. Probably 90% of them end up purchasing something that was never on their radar, that they'd never considered that industry. And so that's a lot of fun for us, is, to see those light bulb moments take place in real time.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, tell us about the book. And, I always ask authors,
Yeah.
why in the world would you give up so much of your existence to write a book? Because it's not something you can do on a weekend. I mean, a PDF book, sure, I've done that, but an actual book, it takes time. So tell us a little bit about the book.
A lot of early mornings before the kids would wake up, right? So, no, really proud of it. It came out about a year and a half ago, non-food franchising. Like I said, happy to share a free digital copy with all of your listeners if they come out to our website, franbridgeconsulting.com. But it's a fairly easy read. I mean, I packed a lot of great content into about 95 pages. So it's awesome. It's done everything I hoped it would do. All the profits go to a great nonprofit, Hope International, that we support. So it wasn't intended to be a moneymaker, but it was really for educating and, again, waking people up to these opportunities that oftentimes are not on their radar. And so it's been such a blessing. So many of our listeners have, or our clients have listened to it or read it prior to even getting on the phone with me. So it just gives us, it allows us to start on third base in our process, if you will.
Yeah, as a baseball fan, you start on third base, you're going to be playing in October. And that's a beautiful thing as spring training is wrapping up at the time of this recording. And I'm like itching. It's like, okay, it's almost ready. Let's go, another season. And who knows? But, I know the Braves are going to be around for it. And we'll see about other teams as well. But it's always one of my favorite times of year because, especially growing up in the Midwest, it's like, okay, winter's finally gonna be ending at some point,
Yeah.
but it's all good.
And we've got the
So
Masters coming up in just a couple of weeks here, which
there you go.
for us in
Yeah.
Georgia, we love that. So
Oh yeah. No, that's an amazing, amazing tournament. It's special. It's well, yeah, I mean, there's great tournaments, but there's certain events that are just special. The Masters, Daytona 500, World Series, obviously Super Bowl is another entity in itself, but there's just certain events that happen throughout the year that are just catch your attention. Whether
yeah.
it's the Olympics or anything else. But love this conversation, John. Where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
Yeah, come out to our website, franbridgeconsulting.com, F-R-A-N, bridgeconsulting.com. We've got a lot of content out there. Like I said, it's entirely free to work with us. I'm essentially a real estate agent, but for franchises. So we get a referral fee from the franchisor. none of that gets passed on to our clients anyway. So it's a great, clean model. But yeah, would love to engage if you're interested in taking next steps. But if nothing else, I'd say sign up. Just share your email address and we'll get the book over to you, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So, John, thank you again for your work and all this amazing stuff that you're doing. I appreciate your
Great.
time today.
Enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Michael.